Hey guys, welcome back to the Speaker's Edge podcast, the podcast dedicated to helping you learn from some of the world's very best speakers and communicators so that you can learn to master your message and inspire your audience every single time you speak. I'm your host for this podcast, Roddy Galbraith, and on the podcast over the last couple of months, we've had some fantastic guests and I have another great guest for you today, the one and only Valorie Burton. She's a world-class executive coach. She's a fantastic speaker and she's a really, really wonderful person as well. So I'm thrilled that you're going to get to meet her in this episode. Before we get to that though, if you haven't downloaded the companion resources for the show, then go to maxwellleadership.com/the Speaker's Edge. Download those resources. And if you enjoy the show, we'd love it if you rate and review as well. Okay, so we're going to dive straight into the interview then with Valorie. Listen to Valorie talk about preparing for different opportunities and different types of audiences. And then at the end, we'll draw out some ways that you can prepare too. Enjoy. Would you want to just give us like 1 minute on who you are, Valorie, for anyone that's been living under a rock that hasn't heard of you and hasn't seen you and doesn't know who you are? Just give them a real quick abridged version of who Valorie is.
Well, I am passionate about helping people live more fulfilling lives, and I use coaching and positive psychology research to help people do that, create the breakthroughs they need to really accomplish their potential. And so I have been writing and speaking. 2024 is 25 years. I founded the Coaching and Positive Psychology Institute. So we train people in personal and executive coaching. Of course, I'm a mentor for the Maxwell Leadership Team. I love speak and like communication is something that comes naturally to me, has since I was a child. But I've worked really hard at improving my communication, but I think everything I've done in my career has been communication. I was in public relations, writing books. I have a graduate degree in journalism. I am a coach. It's all in speaking, all of it's communication. And I feel really strongly about communication as a tool that people don't notice often is the differentiator between those who are successful and those that sometimes struggle. And we always think it's just talent, but if you can communicate well, doors will open for you that don't open for others. And I think it often just kind of gets overlooked. And so this is a skill, no matter who you are, that I think is really powerful. And sometimes it's the secret sauce that you haven't quite pinpointed. So I think this topic and what John has done with this book is extremely important when it comes to success.
It's so true, isn't it? I always think just a simple application of going for a job interview. You know, it's not the best candidate that gets the job. It's the best communicator that gets the job, because it's about communicating the value that you can bring to that particular position. So true.
It's so true.
And you're so poised and confident and likable when you're on stage. But what was kind of early Valorie as a speaker like? What are some of the mistakes that you might have made sort of early on in your career?
You know, I think the thing that I learned that changed things most quickly was because communication comes naturally to me. I can communicate about just about anything. I got feedback one time, I'll never forget. There were these conferences that I used to do, and I would still say 95% of the feedback was like, this was great. I got a lot out of it. And there were two people that really criticized me, which hurt, right? Because like, I don't want to care what people think, but I do.
Yeah, right.
Right. And they basically said that I had talked too much about myself. And I was like, oh, I did. And I went back, I listened. And I think obviously most of the people, because I got a lot of great ratings, didn't take it that way. But when I listened with the critical ear, I realized that I was telling my story. I was trying to tell it in a way that would give them what they needed, but I didn't actually connect the dots for them between my story. Now, here's what you should do with this information to change your life. And so if I was, I was going to be honest and take it as constructive criticism, I realized, most people get what I'm trying to do here, but these people, for whatever reason, took it as I'm just talking about me. So as a communicator, it's always really important when you're telling stories related to you that you say, okay, now here's the lesson from this. Here's how you can apply it to your life. That was huge for me. And that was an early mistake that I made. The assumption that I didn't have to connect the dots for people and that I could just tell a story and they would get it. That's not always the case. So that was a biggie.
That's great. There's so much in there. I think, people often say, well, we tell people, it's not about you, it's about the audience. And so that makes you think, well, I shouldn't talk about myself. But then the message you've lived out, the credibility, the first law, your credibility to share with them is what you've learned from experience, which is about yourself. Yeah. And the crucial difference, which you touched on, I think, is, are you telling the story for you or are you telling the story for them? If you're telling your story to help them understand something, then it's you using your experience to help them, which is good. But if you're telling your story because you look good in your story and you want to impress them, then it doesn't work. So isn't that neat, though, that you were able to pick up on that and then through, I guess, more preparation, practice and premeditation, you're able to still share your story, but in a way that everyone gets the value from it, I'm guessing is what you're saying.
Yes, always. And this is true even as a coach. Like, we are not to sit there talking about ourselves. There can be instances when we do, but it is always for the benefit of the client. And so as a speaker, number one, you need to have stories. That's how people connect with you. Yeah. And those stories do not need to all be about things that you did well. People learn so much from our failures, from even things that may have been painful that we've overcome or worked through. That transparency is really powerful. That ability to be vulnerable on stage, I have found, for me, is what I get the most feedback around. Like, instead of telling a story from the perspective of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did this, and I didn't want to tell people, it's more, oh, what did I learn out of that? Other people have been there. They don't want to tell the story. If I can have enough courage to tell the story, now they see themselves. Now they know they're not alone. Now I can share the lesson that I learned that maybe they need to learn too. Oh, I'm not the only one that has that fear. I'm not the only one that made that bad choice and suffered a consequence. That's where the power really comes from. And so I began really learning that. That was a huge lesson. I mean, I've continued to learn that lesson throughout my speaking career. And so now I've learned to laugh at myself and let people laugh with me.
That's such a great lesson to learn, isn't it? Such a great lesson to learn, because initially I think we all have a bit of imposter syndrome when we start, don't we? We all feel like, who am I to be speaking to these people? I better really try and impress them with all of the great stuff that I've done to earn the right to speak to them. But actually, like you said, they're struggling, they're stuck, and they can relate much more to our early journey and the things that we've overcome along the way. But I think the key to...
It's not just the early journey, though, either.
Right.
Like, I think it's our really day. I mean, I recently incorporated into a talk some photos from this year, from last spring break. And Roddy, I look ridiculous in these photos, but I always tell these stories around not letting your fear make decisions for you. And this is a part of how I teach about resilience. So we went to the Dominican Republic, and we went to this touristy place where they had monkeys and you could go in and like pet the monkeys. I'm not an animal person, but for my love of my family, we have a dog, we have horses, we've got 2 cows, and now they had me petting monkeys. Okay. And so it's the only reason I'm doing it, because the other 4 people in my family love animals. We have a picture of me. I was trying to stay back so I didn't have to interact with the monkeys. That's not how it worked out. The monkeys were all over me, and I looked, when I say I look terrified, I mean, it's an embarrassing, like, I look like
okay, we're going to need those photos. We're going to need those photos.
And I sat there and talked to myself, do I share this? Because I overcame it while I was there. So I showed the before and the after, right? But I mean, I look hideous. and I didn't want to show it, but I was like, this is a great illustration. And the first time I showed it, I was like, I sure hope they get it. I hope they're not looking at she looks ugly. But it was they laughed, but they also got, what was I saying to myself when I looked like that versus the picture of me smiling with the monkey on my shoulder. So it took me a minute because I was like, this is hideous. About 6 months in, I was like, see how this story might work. So sometimes it's the stuff from our current life where we go, yeah, I know this, and yet I still have to use these lessons actively in my life.
Did you want to jump in there?
I was just going to say it just helps you connect more, I think, because you're so accomplished and so great at what you do, but to know that you're not perfect, I think then connects you more with other people, doesn't it?
I love the vulnerability and the authenticity. Sorry, go ahead, Valerie.
Yeah, and we all do it, and that's part of what makes it fun. Like, we can laugh at ourselves, but the lessons work. And that was the whole point. It's like, yeah, I realized in the middle of this, I wasn't being resilient. What do I stand on stage and teach people? Okay, let me say something different. The monkeys are not trying to kill me. Like, and it changed my whole outlook. So yeah, that's just one little example.
I love that example because we can connect with that and we can see your authenticity and your vulnerability, but it doesn't undermine your credibility as a speaker or a coach or whatever you're speaking on. So you're being vulnerable, but not in the area of your expertise. It's not like you're saying, oh, let me tell you about the time I was coaching someone. It was absolutely hopeless. They asked for their money back. They complained. They sued me. And I've never really got the hang of it, to be honest with you, just to be authentic. Then you're like, well, that's great, Valerie, but maybe, I'm going to find somebody else. I love your authenticity, but I need someone else to help me. So it's an area where you can be vulnerable, but it doesn't undermine your credibility.
I think that's a really important point that you make, Roddy. If we're still working through something, that's not what we bring to the stage, because we don't have credibility in it, right? We constantly, as speakers, as coaches, as writers, whatever it is that you're doing to help people grow, we have to be aware that we're not working out our stuff on our audience.
Right.
So it's super important to say, okay, where am I in this? We do need to have some degree of having conquered or worked through the issue that we are teaching on. And so, if you're on the stage and you can't get through the story because you're crying about it, it's not time yet for that story.
Yeah.
You're holding the audience, and they need to feel secure in the idea that you can hold them through whatever it is. So that doesn't mean it's not something you might not eventually share. It means you have more work to do. You have more lessons to learn and ways to grow that you will eventually be able to share. I believe our lives are living laboratories, those of us who are helping people with personal growth, but you've got to be able to grow in an area before you can teach in that area.
I wonder if one of your things that you teach about coaching is applicable here. What did you say? Like, I remember you speaking on stage at the IMC, where you said if you poke it and it still hurts, or if you poke it and it's raw or something. Well, what was that?
Yeah,
Can you tell us that?
So people often ask, like, what's the difference? How do you know when someone needs coaching versus counseling?
Right.
And so I describe it as a wound. If it's an open wound, that means when I touch it, you flinch. There's still a lot of pain there. That's counseling. There's something still to work through. If I touch it and it's a scar, like, you see the scar, you see I've been through something, but I could pinch it, I could touch it. You're not going to flinch because you're healed from it. That's coaching, because coaching is about where am I now and where am I going into the future. I'm not having to go back in the past and heal something. I'm actually able to move through it.
Beautiful. All right. Should we talk a little bit about how you prepare then, with all of your expertise and everything that you've learned? How do you prepare now? If you've got an event coming up, like, do you just kind of wing it? Do you prepare? Do you prepare a lot or a little? Does it depend on the event, who you're speaking to, depend on the topic? Give us some insights.
I always prepare. The most important piece, I would say, is understanding who is the audience and what is the organization trying to achieve. There's a reason they've brought me in. I always ask them why. What made you choose me over all the other incredible speakers you could choose from? I listen closely to that, because those are the things I want to amplify, because they've identified this is what the audience needs. I ask a lot of questions about the audience. Who are they? What stage are they in their career? What are the challenges that they are dealing with that you're wanting to help them be able to conquer and move through? I want to know how many people are in the audience. What's the kind of the setup? I'm different in different environments, right? So, last week I was speaking in Boston to maybe 30 or 40 senior level women executives. That's a small audience, but very, very accomplished, warm-hearted, like women that often don't have that many others that they can connect with. And then not long before that, I was speaking to 4,000 doctors, right, at a convention. That's a very different approach. So understanding, what am I there to help that organization accomplish? What would success look like for them? What are the challenges they deal with? What's different about that audience? If I'm speaking to a few hundred engineers and it's 90% men, I'm probably going to approach that differently than the group of women, or the 4,000 doctors that's 50-50 men and women. So I listen a lot for who that audience is, what their challenges are. My expertise doesn't change, but my approach, the examples that I might use will change as I'm trying to customize that message for the audience. Some research on that audience, even how we present like if I'm using audio visual, which a lot of times we are, in the images that we use, what do those images look like? Do they see themselves? So that's really important. The core of the message is why they brought me there. I'm not changing what I'm saying about how to be resilient, right, or how happiness impacts your performance levels, but it is in the examples, the stories, the issues that I might address, because I can't address everything I know about. So I'm listening for those things and always interviewing the client to understand what to bring in and what to maybe leave out of that particular engagement.
And then what do you do with that? So you interview your host or whoever it is that's bringing you in. You gather as much information as you can about the audience. Do you then sit down with your PowerPoints and select the pictures, or do you have someone that helps you with that? Do you think about the story?
My assistant, typically, she's in on that. So there's 2 team members in on it. Even my visual brand manager, he chooses like what I'm wearing based on who the audience is, what the stage is going to look like. I'm really trying to make sure that I'm enhancing their event, that they feel like it was better because I was there, that the success was higher because they brought me in as a speaker. So we think about all of those things. So my assistant will, as she's in on, she's taking all the notes. She's helping to change out PowerPoints and graphics. And then we get together after she's drafted the first piece based on what we're talking about. And then we're changing other things out. She's almost always spot on when it comes to the images and so forth. But I do more of the, what are we changing out in the content? Because that's my specialty, is what is the message that's being delivered.
Fantastic.
Awesome. And how about TV? How is TV? Because you were on Good Morning America, I think, recently, weren't you? How's that different
Today
terms of preparation? Oh, the Today Show. I'm sorry, I'm English, so they're all the same to me.
So when I'm doing those shows, often it's working with the producer. My previous background was in public relations, so I used to prepare clients to do TV interviews, and my master's is in journalism, so I'm often thinking from the journalist's perspective. I think that helped me with getting, from the very early in my career, getting a lot of media interviews. So very importantly, same thing. Who is the audience?
Mm.
So in that case, there's two audiences. There are the viewers or listeners, and then there's the producers and that network, that show that wants to make sure that they have content that connects immediately with their audience and the audience stays tuned in. That's their goal. Keep eyeballs on the screen, right? Keep them from flipping the channel. So that's what I'm thinking about. If you think too much about you and what you're trying to sell or what you want to get out there, that's where I've seen people make a mistake, because your audience is the show and your audience is that audience. If you focus on that audience, then the show always benefits. So I prepare by thinking about who's in this audience. Very importantly, how much time do we have? Is it an interview with just me? Are there other guests or experts on? That's really huge. You have to be much more laser focused than a television interview because you don't have much time. If I get 5 minutes, let alone 6 minutes in a national TV interview, that's a long interview. I've had interviews that were shorter than 3 minutes, and then the host is talking. So what you say needs to be super impactful in a short period of time. And hopefully you're giving the viewers something they can take away immediately and go, oh, let me try that. And that better be something that's actually useful. Otherwise, why?
How do you get to that then, Valorie? How do you get to those sound bites? Let's say that you've got 1, 2, or 3, 10 or 15 second sound bites or something, which is your interview basically. How do you decide on the words? Do you just kind of go with the flow, or do you write them out beforehand? Do you practice them with your assistant, practice them in the mirror? Or do you record? How do you get those great sound bites when you're on TV and the stakes are high for, every second counts?
Really great question. I'm sitting here, my wheels are turning. How do I do that? So Roddy, it's in my DNA to be very practical. And I'll never forget I had a news writing and reporting class my first semester at journalism school. And I always was like, I'm a good writer. And my professor said, you write with really big words and long sentences. And I was like, yeah, isn't that impressive? And she's like,
yeah. Do you love it?
No, I want the average 10th grader to understand what you're saying, right? Say it in as few words as possible with as much punch as possible. So I focus on what is the key thing I'm trying to get across, and how do I say that fully, but very succinctly. And I think that does take practice. The biggest part is being aware of how important that is. What I see a lot of people struggle with in television is talking way too long, getting too focused on things they want to say that maybe it's extraneous information, and the interviewer is like having to cut them off. So yes, I think practice is important. I think recording yourself is important, but most importantly, if you've got some points, know what the most important is, the second most, and the third.
Right.
You better say that most important thing first, because you might run out of time if you're holding on too long. So I think that's really, really, really critical. And understanding that is critical. I mean,
that's gold.
I can't emphasize that enough. When I used to have, PR clients, and we would have a producer call, I would say, look, we need to get back to them immediately, because they're on tight deadlines. And if I take 3 hours, they might have moved on to somebody else. You've got to understand how fast the media moves. And that includes, when you're in your segment, and practice it. And you might have 10 things you want to say. You're not going to say 10 things. So you better be clear which things are most important.
That's brilliant. I love it. John says, say it so it sticks, doesn't he? Say it so it sticks.
But he also says that you would, when you're doing your preparation, you have a big message and a best message. So your big message is always the same. It's bigger than the content. It's what the audience needs. Do you have an overriding big message that you bring to like every speaking opportunity that you have, Valorie?
Yes. I would say the biggest message is that how far you go is determined by how much you're willing to grow. That We've
Juicy.
got growth. Yeah, you've got growth gaps. If you understand what those are, you can get to the finish line of whatever goals, whatever vision you come up with. So the personal growth, your willingness to not just coach, but to self-coach. So when I talk about the resilience message, it is success requires resilience. We all know we don't go from point A to point Z. We think we are, like, we're so optimistic when we start out, but inevitably you face challenges. So there are probably a couple of these messages that I weave in depending on what it is, but the resilience message is huge. And I thought when I started speaking on resilience in 2008, I had just finished the grad program in positive psychology. I was starting to teach resilience. I was on a team that worked with the military, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. It's the recession started. And I thought when the recession was over, people were going to go, okay, we don't need resilience anymore. Let's get back to the basic motivation. That never happened. It never happened because organizations, people realize they're constantly dealing with bumps, obstacles, challenges, disappointments, and it's resilience that gets them through. So when I started, that wasn't the word I used. That was not, I didn't understand. And people would often ask me early in my speaking career, what is your core thing? When I would try to tell them, my mission is inspiring people to live more fulfilling lives, they just look at me like, well, that's nice, right? But what's your thing? And so you have to know what your thing is. And overall, I help people with personal growth, and personal growth enables resilience.
She's so good, isn't she? Such a wealth of information. She's a great speaker and communicator, as you can see, but so many pearls of wisdom as well. Now, if you're interested in becoming a better speaker, why not check out the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team? Valorie is a mentor on the team, like I'm a mentor. She's the mentor for coaching. I'm the mentor for speaking. Come join us in the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team. It's no obligation. Jump on a call with a program advisor. Find out a little bit about what it means to be a Maxwell Leadership Certified Team member. Just go to maxwellleadership.com/speak. If you're interested in developing your speaking, I always say it is a complete no-brainer. There's nowhere better to go to learn to be a better speaker. No one better to model than John. No better system than the Maxwell method of speaking, and nowhere better to learn that than as a Maxwell Leadership Certified Team member. So go to maxwellleadership.com/speak and find out for yourself. You'll be very glad you did. All right then, so let's look at some things to keep in mind when you're preparing for your next audience. I think the first thing you need to realize is you have to deliver. You're going to be using their time, so you have to deliver. You've got to do a good job. That's non-negotiable. But how you get there, how you get to doing a great job is negotiable. So you can think about that. So I think you want to ask yourself, what's the best use of my time in preparing for this particular audience? How can I make sure that I deliver, but make it a good use of my time as well? And so to get there, I think you want to resist the temptation to reinvent the wheel every time you speak. It's nice to be creative, but you don't have to come up with something new every time. In fact, you're much more likely to do a good job if you're reusing something that you know works. So go to your treasure chest, dig out your best bits, whether it's videos or jokes or stories, teaching pieces, exercises, icebreakers, whatever it is, whatever you've used before, whatever works, whatever is you at your best. Inspect that, look at it and ask yourself, is there any way that I could use this for this particular audience? Can I take some of these, and is there something I can do to make it fit? There's a confidence from reusing things that you know works. Now, John says there's no shame in reusing a story you've used before, but try and make it a little bit better each time. Try and up-level it each time. So realize you need to deliver. You have to respect their time. You have to treasure every precious second of their time. So that's non-negotiable. You have to deliver. Ask yourself, what's the best use of my time in order to do a great job? Resist the temptation to reinvent the wheel, because you don't have to come up with something completely new every time. Go to your treasure chest, ask yourself, what are your best bits, and say, could I reuse any of these here? Because there's a confidence that comes with that, and it saves you enormous amounts of time as well. And maybe you only need to change 1 or 2% to make something you've used before fit perfectly for this audience too. It's nice to be creative. I'm not saying don't be creative. It's nice to be creative, but think first, do I have to be creative? And if you do have to be creative, if you do need to do something that you haven't done before, try and make it a small percentage of the overall keynote or presentation. If you're coming up with a new 5%, maybe that's okay. You've got 95% tried and tested material and you're trying something new. It's better to try new things that you haven't done before in front of a free audience or a less important audience, but if you can't get away with it and you have to put some new stuff in, then try and make it a smaller part of the presentation. It's nice to be creative, but do it when it's the stakes are not quite so high. And keep your best stories somewhere where you can access them. Keep that treasure chest nicely organized. I just use Excel. And I reorganize a list of different stories and jokes and diagrams and teaching pieces, everything. I pile it into Excel and it's there for me to go through very, very quickly. It doesn't need to be a perfect system, but some kind of system, some kind of treasure chest where all your best bits are works really, really well. So you have to deliver. What's the best use of your time? In order to deliver, don't reinvent the wheel. Dig out your best bits, see if you can shape them to fit this particular audience. There's a confidence that comes from reusing things that you used before. It's nice to be creative, but if you have to be creative, either do it offline when it's less important or make it a smaller part of your presentation and keep your best stories organized so that you can access them. All right, that's it for this week. Don't forget to download the companion guide. Go to maxwellleadership.com/The Speaker's Edge. I'll see you next week. And remember, communication is a learnable skill. It's worth learning. It's worth getting good at. It's worth mastering your message so you can inspire your audience every time you speak. Thanks for listening today. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Lots of love. Bye-bye. God bless.